We've got breaking news out of the NFL. The Jaguars' two-way star Travis Hunter has been placed on the IR. He'll miss at least 4 games with a knee injury. He suffered it at practice on Thursday. It's a tough blow for the number 2 overall pick, who was coming off of his best offensive game as a pro. Prior to the team's bye week, he was cooking. But then he went for a career-high 8 catches for 101 yards and a touchdown in a loss to the Rams in London. The earliest Hunter will be eligible to return is on November 30th in Nashville against the Titans. So you take a look at that schedule, and that's where you will find the Titans on the right side of your screen. Week 13, coming off the bye, the Raiders, Texans, Chargers, Cardinals, the games that he for sure will miss, and we'll see if he's able to come back after the IR stint. Let's now welcome in our fantasy analyst, Jamey Eisenberg, for more. And Jamey, it certainly seemed like Hunter was getting in the right spot and getting in the groove and getting more points for someone like me who had Hunter on his fantasy roster. How big of a blow is this to Hunter and then to the Jags as a whole?
Well, Zach, it's obviously tough for Hunter because, like you said, he was starting to get going. You saw it was over 20 targets in his last 2 games. So they're clearly trying to make him more of a focal point of the offense. And they said as much coming off their bye week that he was going to be a focal point of the offense, which makes a lot of sense. You don't spend the number 2 overall pick of somebody like his caliber and not use him to the extent that we sort of have seen this up and down performance. And I think maybe trending toward being more of a receiver at this point than a cornerback. And so now it becomes the Jaguars' purpose and hopefully their mission to get Brian Thomas going, because he's been such a disappointment so far for them, in reality, for fantasy managers as well. And so he's dealing with a little bit of a shoulder injury. Hopefully he's going to be okay. This is a great matchup against the Raiders this week, so hopefully he takes advantage of it. I think the thing that you are disappointed in is that you wanted to see Trevor Lawrence with both receivers playing at a high level and how this would finish, whether they make a playoff push or not, but to see what they have going into 2026. But at least for the short term, Brian Thomas has to step up. And really at this point last year, they had their bye, I believe it was week 11. From the end of the season, there was no Evan Ingram, there was no Christian Kirk, there was no Trevor Lawrence, but Brian Thomas really took off. So hopefully coming off their bye again, we see the best of Brian Thomas.
Yeah, Brian Thomas, a name that had been flirted out there as maybe a trade candidate. Probably safe to say he will be for sure staying put now with the injury to Travis Hunter. You look at this Jags offense, is there anyone else that you like potentially knowing that Travis Hunter is out aside from Brian Thomas?
A lot will be put on Travis Etienne. So, he had 3 really tough games prior to their bye week, 3 of the, toughest run defenses to go against. So he should be a little bit better this week, and clearly moving forward, I think the focus becomes on the run game. But in the passing game, Parker Washington will be the guy I think you look to pick up in the short term. He's available in almost every fantasy league. So hopefully he has an opportunity to make some plays for Jacksonville. And then they're hoping to get Brenton Strange back, their tight end. He's been on IR as well. He's eligible to return, I believe, after next week. So once they get him back, he'll obviously be somebody that fantasy managers can turn to as well. Really, this is disappointing for Trevor Lawrence, though, because you look at the 3 games that he had prior to their bye week, 19 or more fantasy points, starting to play like the guy I think we wanted to see. And again, would like to have got the opportunity to see what this looked like with both receivers healthy. But still a low-end streaming type of quarterback for this week, and then we'll see what happens moving forward. Some really tough matchups coming ahead, though. But Parker Washington, in terms of the wide receivers, he's the guy to go get.
Yeah, Jags sitting at 4-3, 2 games behind the Colts, who are at 7-1. In totality, when you look at the whole situation for the Jags, is there any reason for optimism, you think, moving forward with a Travis Hunter losing him? Or do you look to not even start Brian Thomas anymore? Do you look to not even play Trevor Lawrence and all those things?
So Lawrence is in the low-end starting conversation for this week, even without Hunter. Again, the Raiders defense is clearly still beatable. There are a lot of great quarterbacks this week, so you can pivot away from him. So if you see, let's say, for example, a lot of people drop Kyler Murray, great matchup against the Cowboys. Joe Flacco's still out there in some leagues. As long as he's healthy, taking on the Bears, you look to start him ahead of Trevor Lawrence. A lot of people drop Sam Darnold going into his bye week. I would start him over Lawrence as well. So there are some quarterbacks you can find that should be better than Lawrence for this week. I'm going to start Brian Thomas mostly in 3 receiver leagues. You can still get some production out of him in 2 receiver leagues. Again, matchup is great. I just hope that we start to see the guy that we saw at the end of last season. Maybe not to the same heights and the same level of production, but at least something close to that. We've seen flashes. It just hasn't been consistent. And now the onus is definitely on him to have to step up, not just for fantasy managers, but clearly for his team.
That's a 4 o'clock game in Vegas against the Raiders, and we will look forward to seeing at least what the Jags look like for now for 4 games without Travis Hunter on offense and on defense. Your perspective of him on defense moving forward, do you think that there's any reason to be excited for the prospect of what he can be when he comes back?
We knew it was always going to be tough to play both sides, and I think this was kind of a discovery year to see, can he do it? Can he be more successful on one side of the ball or the other? I think for what this team needed, I think we saw that in the game in London. They needed him to be, I think, more of a wide receiver. They made a trade prior to the bye week to get a cornerback, so I think they were trying to address that position to allow him to be a little bit more of a wide receiver and more of an offensive threat. I think you use him in spots on defense, obvious third down situations, where you're playing your nickel package, playing your dime package, give him the chance to, sort of still be a playmaker on that side of the ball. But I think his upside is as an offensive skill player, as a wide receiver, being a threat for Trevor Lawrence. They have not maximized Trevor Lawrence, and that was my expectation. Was you give him this playmaker after developing one as a rookie last year in Brian Thomas, and let's see if he can live up to the hype that he has failed to do so. So I think moving forward, he's more suited to be a wide receiver, but that's why I don't run NFL teams. That's for other people. But I don't think as a defensive player, that's where you maximize his strength.